Okay, we're getting close to 8 o'clock. I want to talk some more about Planned Parenthood, everything it does. In 2013, last year, where they have their annual report, 866,000 Pap tests and breast examinations performed, 3.5 million birth control information and services provided. Directly reduces the abortion rate. To provide birth control, accurate science-based information and services directly reduces the number of abortions. 4.5 million tests and treatment for sexually transmitted infections provided. And yet what we hear Kent talking about is the founder of Planned Parenthood 100 years ago, Margaret Sanger. Maybe she believed in eugenics. Maybe she had some bad ideas. Irrelevant, totally irrelevant today. Planned Parenthood today has nothing to do with eugenics. All right, here's an inflammatory, an incendiary charge. 80% of clinics located in or near black areas in cities in this country. The reason it's incendiary is because it implies that Planned Parenthood is a racist organization that's simply interested in reducing the number of black children that are born. That is what's known as a blood libel. If we understand that the Planned Parenthood strategy lowers the abortion rate, and if we realize all of these positive services that Planned Parenthood provides, then having the clinics located in low-income parts of the country is an admirable service that Planned Parenthood is providing. It's helping black women improve their lives by preventing unwanted pregnancy through contraception, and if needed, by providing abortion services to them. To locate the clinics in poor or minority parts of the country is an admirable service, and not something to be ashamed of, and not something to be hinted that it's some kind of form of racism. That's a blood libel.
Can't you have the last word, and then we'll take questions?
Yeah, good.
I don't know exactly what a blood libel is, but if you recall, I specifically said I wasn't charging current leaders of Planned Parenthood with her philosophy. But it is curious that she wanted to deal with those human weeds, among them blacks. And even though the Planned Parenthood's leadership may not, I'm not accusing them of anything in terms of their philosophy, but they find themselves in black neighborhoods. And unfortunately, black women suffer the greatest proportional number of abortions in America. And I'll conclude with this, if I may. I know a woman whose mother in 1956 had 2 children, 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. And that mother went to the doctor, and the doctor told her she was pregnant. And the doctor, who was a good friend, told her, I know you're finished with your family. You've got 2 children. I can take care of this for you. Now, this was 1956, almost 20 years before Roe versus Wade. This was a physician who knew how to get things done, if you will. It wasn't back alley, but he knew how to get it done. That mother was horrified. She couldn't believe her own physician would suggest such a thing, suggest an abortion. And she ended up going to another physician for the term of her pregnancy. I'm glad she did, because that mother who chose life gave birth to my wife. My wife has 3 children, and I have 4 children, and together we're raising 7 children. She's a remarkable woman. She's a dental hygienist. She's cared for AIDS patients because she cares for people. And there's a good chance that if her mother had followed that abortion philosophy, all the good work that my wife has done would not have been done. I'm pro-life. I'm not proud that I'm pro-life, but I'm relentlessly pro-life because it's the right place to be.
Great.
I was born in 56.
All right, so we've got a few people here. Does anybody have a question for either? Yes, Betsy?
I have questions for both of them
Okay.
because they both ignored 3 issues that hinge on public policy.
Okay, fire away.
1, the moral issues of overpopulation. Finite resources cannot support infinite population. Yes, we have dropped 1 in 6. Maybe that's what we needed in order to be able to care for the other 5 that have made it.
What do you think?
You want to do them one at a time?
Sure. We can do them 1 at a time. I got them all written down.
That's a good argument, but I would disagree, because we're 58 million shy of our population based on that, and we're bringing in immigrants to make up that difference. And the other thing that we're about to face, you and I may not face this, I know that you have a little bit of gray hair, but when Social Security was set up, it was based on 5 or 6 people working for every 1 person who was in retirement. We're now down to 2. America, just economically, and by the way, this is not the reason to have children. It is not the reason to have children. But economically, we've got a problem. And at this point, on the federal level, nobody's really addressing it. Republicans and Democrats, they all talk about it, but they never do anything about it. And on the state level, we've got a problem with the pensions, the same kind of thing. We can only borrow so much money from China. And unless we have new workers, new consumers, we're going to end up being like Europe. And Europe is going the way of, it's a Western civilization, but it's going to be built on the basis of Islam. Because the people that are dominating France, we've just seen this, and we'll have the population is growing, and Europe will be a Muslim, a totally different culture than it is now. That may be their choice, but that's not what America should be. And I'm not taking a shot at Muslims. If any of you all are Muslim, that's great. But America should continue to keep up the tradition that it was founded for. And that would be by replenishing itself. We are in a negative free fall. And I would submit we don't have a problem with overpopulation. We have a problem with distribution of the resources.
Well, when you said Europe is Muslim, where do you get that?
Europe is becoming Muslim. It's not Muslim yet.
What is the percentage of Muslims in Europe?
I can't tell you that exact number, but the calculations suggest that Muslims will be the dominant party, not dominant people in France.
Which calculations suggest that?
People who do populations, I can't quote the study, and I'm not the expert on it. I'm not going to pretend I am, but by supposedly 2040 or there'll be more Muslims in France than there will be Frenchmen.
Well, I'm
Okay.
a source area.
So-
I'm sorry.
But you don't have any sources.
I wasn't planning on answering that
So
question.
France, which is a nation of approximately 40 to 50 million people, will have 25 million Muslims in it?
I can't even answer that because I don't know.
All right, so Jeff's going to
Okay,
take your
yes,
question.
overpopulation. I think it is a problem, not because of various religions, but because of the carrying capacity of the earth. And so I'm concerned about overpopulation. Back in high school, I guess I read The Population Bomb, one of the first public policy issues I ever became interested in as a teenager. But the way to solve the overpopulation problem has nothing to do with abortion. Two separate questions. The best way to solve it is through better birth control technologies, made more widely available to any woman who wants or needs contraception. And economic development for women. We find, through social science, economics, sociology, political science, studies that when a country reaches a certain level of economic development, the birth rate declines. I think that's a good thing. And so I would use the Planned Parenthood and Democratic Party strategy to deal with overpopulation, and really I would try to separate the abortion issue out of that question.
Sure.
Sir, you talked a little bit about how you would like to see the number of abortions go down, but maybe I missed it. Can you talk a little bit about why you would like to see the number of abortions go down?
I think every decent human being would like to see that minimized.
The question is why?
Well, I don't want to see them go up. I mean, but the best way to make them go down is prevention. And so you're asking a kind of weird question. Can somebody rephrase it, Beth? Can
I've
you?
got one answer, and one answer is an abortion is a medical procedure. And it's a medical procedure that's very stressful on a woman's body. Let's minimize those stresses on a woman's body.
Especially later in the pregnancy. The farther along, the more
Risk.
danger, the more hazard, the more stress, and the more potential harm. So if we're going to have X number of abortions in the world per year, I would want to see those performed at the earliest feasible stage rather than later stages. Can you please speak some more, because I don't really don't understand what you're getting at.
I'm trying to understand why. Why do we want to see abortion go down? I know why I would like to see it go down, but
Okay,
I'm
why
just
would
curious.
you? I'll see if I agree with you. Maybe
I think
you'll.
it's morally wrong.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
But I'm
well,
trying to understand, is it a moral statement or?
how about one way it can go down?
For millions of Americans, it's morally wrong.
But we want to know
Okay.
why it's wrong for you.
Why?
You know,
What does my opinion matter? It doesn't.
you're the presenter. You
Pardon
come
me?
here to make that point.
My opinion about religion and morality really should be of no interest of yours. What I'm talking about is public policy that will. All right, so if the abortion rate continues to decline using Planned Parenthood's basic strategy, half of America will be happy, because the country will be getting more moral. I don't see any downside to reducing the abortion rate. I think it's great. I don't know what,
It does seem like you're dodging the issue, because Bill Clinton said he wanted to see it rare.
Yeah.
And you said
I
you want to
agree
see it
with- I
rare.
agree with
but
Bill
why do you
Clinton
want to
on
see it
that.
rare?
Then how do you
I wanna
get
see
it to
rare because
become
it's
rare?
important, But to me, it's important to me, but you want to see it minimized for what reason?
for moral and health reasons.
Give us your
Both.
moral reason, please.
All right, I think it's immoral to use abortion as a form of birth control,
Why?
because there are technologies that are available that are so much more effective and easier and work better.
But what if they don't work?
Why go through an operation when you don't have to?
But what if it doesn't work?
Well, that's.
What doesn't work?
Yeah.
What if your birth control doesn't
Okay,
work?
Then abortion
What if
should be
you're-
available
you're
for cases
raped?
like that. Right.
It doesn't matter, isn't it? It's the law, and I should be able to get an abortion whatever I want.
That's
Whatever
the other,
reason.
That's another valid perspective, right? The people who feel abortion is contrary to God's will make up a certain segment of the population. There's another segment of the population, this will not change, another segment of the population that feels that it would call themselves pro-choice. Okay?
I don't want to be forced to give birth either.
Yeah. I think that's valid also. I think it's immoral to force a woman to give birth when it would damage her life.
What about the child?
What about the child?
Okay.
It's
now,
not a
wait,
child.
Wait, okay, so we have one question from, so you want to ask, should we talk about what about the child?
Kent,
Okay? Answer this woman's question. What about the child? I assume you mean the unborn child.
Yes.
Okay. Planned Parenthood strategy reduces the number of unborn children who will be terminated, who will be killed, if you will, who will be murdered, however you want to say it. Planned Parenthood and the Democratic Party have the strategy that works.
And do you believe it is murder?
That's irrelevant.
But I mean, do you
Not
believe,
to
you
the
just said
baby.
that.
No,
What about the
murder
baby?
is a
Does the baby
legal
have a choice?
category. Murder is a legal and legislative term. Okay? So, Roe versus Wade and all the laws that were based on that have come in, that have been passed since then, state that abortion in the first trimester is not murder. Okay? That's the law of the
When
United
is
States right
conception?
now. Huh?
When is a baby conceived? When does conception begin?
What difference does that make?
No.
No, we're
When does
Uh,
life begin? When is a
Okay.
baby, when is?
Life began on Earth 3.5 billion years ago.
When the baby's born.
No, legally.
9 months later.
Legally,
Even though it has a heartbeat?
it depends on
It
the
can't,
state.
it's not viable.
It
It
varies
can't
by
live on its
state.
own.
In some states, it's viability. Erica's right. In some states, it's a question, it's when is the baby
Quicken, I mean, there's
viable?
nothing in the Bible, there's nothing in the history, there's nothing in, I don't even know where all this nonsense ever
All
started.
right, so basically, to answer your question, what about the baby? Fewer babies, if you will be murdered if Planned Parenthood's and the Democratic Party's strategy is implemented across this country, and conversely, if the Republicans win their human life amendment, what about the baby? More babies will be terminated.
You
No,
just
wait a
said
minute.
it.
More babies will be murdered using your terminology. Republican Party's strategy on this, the Right to Life movement strategy since 1973 has been evil. Raises the murder rate, raises the abortion rate, and that's the proof.
What's your source of what is evil? Where do you get that?
Raising the abortion rate for no reason is evil.
Okay, I've got, this impinges on my second policy issue that neither
Good.
of you addressed, but you're touching on the edge of it, but on one side of it. What is the moral issue of the unwanted child?
Can't.
Children who are born into unwanted situations are far more likely to be neglected and or abused. We do not have enough placement options for them. So the moral question is it more moral to end the life in the first trimester before a child is viable, if it were to be born, and therefore not put that life through the trauma of abuse and or neglect? Or do we stick by this total, all abortions are wrong, every fetus that can make it to birth must be brought into the world, and put that child into a totally tragic life?
Your presupposition is not valid.
Look at,
As an OBGYN
Uh-huh.
who's delivered 7,000 babies,
mhm.
and unfortunately has also done an abortion, which was the most tragic thing of my life. I can tell you that I can place any baby, don't care what the deformities are, I can place that baby into a caring home. So that's not a valid presupposition.
Well, that's you specifically in your little area. I mean, we've had this experiment play out in Romania when they made women have babies that nobody wanted, and they wound up in, orphanages where they just became, little animals, little nothings.
They were alive.
They were alive. Great. Wow. That was a great life. Wow.
Well,
I don't know
they
about
should
that.
be able
Ask
to
one of
speak
them
for
how
that.
they feel about that. And then you've also got the ones that stayed at home with their parents and wound up becoming murderers or criminals or all kinds of things because they weren't loved, because they weren't wanted. I mean, that experiment did not work.
All right, let me respond, the moral factors around the question of unwanted children. I think it's I think it's a real issue. I don't think that anybody has the right to come along and say that's not a valid concern for you to have, with all due respect. Unwanted children increase the total amount of suffering in the world. They may survive, they may thrive, they may do fine, they may not. And so, again, the Planned Parenthood and Democratic Party strategy minimize the number of unwanted children over the long term, consistently, reliably, and we've solved this problem. Right to Life movement has not.
I'm almost 65 years old, in my lifetime, and I'm not that well exposed, but I've only met one woman who ever even insinuated that her child was unwanted. It happened to be in a debate, a group debate, on TV, and she happened to be for the pro-choice side. And she was asked at one point, by someone, well, have you ever regretted having your child? Because she said she had one child, and she kind of stumbled a minute and said, I'm not sure. To which somebody commented, gee, I hope your child's not watching today. That's a sad circumstance. I believe if that woman would have put that baby up for adoption, particularly in this day and age, some couple who cannot conceive would have lovingly taken that child. I'm not aware of a lot of unwanted children in our inner cities where there are many black single-parent homes. Those kids are loved and cared for. Now, unfortunately, because single-parent homes don't always do as well as mom and dad being there, some of those kids do go awry. But that's not a reason to terminate their lives. And it's certainly not a reason, for instance, there is a politician, it was a Republican, Ben Carson, became a premier child neurosurgeon out of the inner city of Detroit. And I would hate to think, and I doubt he's going to be our next president, but he's a good man. I would hate to think that his loss would have been, that his life would have been lost because someone was concerned about inner city poor kids.